Hey guys, I'm Odabear. This lesson we're just going to go the whole way through Ableton Live's Reverb unit. So just a quick overview on Reverb. Reverb is the continuation of reflected sound after the original has been removed. It usually happens in large open areas or small areas with reflective surfaces. Everyone has experienced reverb in their life. There's not many places where there wouldn't be reverb. For example, when you clap or yell in maybe like an empty car park or in a room, there's a noticeable tail or decay of quick echoes that slowly fade off. That's known as reverb. Okay, to start with, we're going to grab a small transient instrument. So I'm going to go to my plugins. I'm going to go to Audio Units, Native Instruments, and Massive. Okay, we'll just quickly close this. Okay, so we only want to be hearing Massive at the moment. So what we're going to do is solo the track. So all of this, none of these instruments come through. So to solo it, we go down to the S down here. Click it, and now that it's highlighted in blue, it is solid. Okay, so we're going to insert a MIDI clip. We're not really going to do much here. We're just going to put in just a couple of sounds as more or less a demonstration. So we'll do a C3, and we'll do a shift up and a C4. Okay, now we're going to head to our audio effects. Going to scroll down to Reverb. We're just going to drag this whole Reverb unit all the way onto Massive over here. And we're going to press play on that. Okay, so now we just need to quickly rename this so we don't lose the track. Just name it Reverb for now. Okay, now let's get started. We'll start with the dry wet, which is down here. So the dry wet blends between the untreated sound and the fully treated sound. So turn down to 0, you won't hear any reverb at all. Turn it up to 100% and you'll only be hearing the reverberated sound coming through. When adjusting parameters on Ableton's Reverb, it's a good idea to have the dry wet at 100%. This allows you to get a better feel for the effect of the reverb, what you're applying to it. And once you're happy, then we adjust it as desired. Okay, so input processing. The start of Ableton's reverb signal chain, all of the audio passes through here first. This is where you set the filter cutoff with the XY controller as well as the pre-delay. So that's in here. Okay, the low cut and high cut. These two filters here are used to cut off the highs, which would be a high cut basically. So down here, the high cut. Or the lows. So low cut is this one. So cutting off all the lows would be over here, and cutting off all the highs would be over here. So we'll leave it in the middle for now. If the high end of the signal is cut off coming in, you'll lose all the sparkle that was in the sound originally in the reverb, making it a darker sound more or less. So let's play it here. And we'll cut off all the highs. So it's a much darker sound. There's not many of the high notes coming through. Just so we can get a better view for it, we'll grab the spectrum over here and we'll also put that on the track. So notice in the spectrum where the notes are being played, or where the frequencies are coming out. Okay, so with our pre-delay, this is the amount of time it takes the sound to reach the first reflective surface. Obviously, if the room's bigger, it'll take a lot longer for the sound to reach its first wall or floor and bounce back. So the most natural settings of a pre-delay would be between 1 millisecond, so down here, and 25 milliseconds all the way up here. So this would be a small room, and this would be a large room. So notice the delay in there. Okay, early reflections are over here. The first echoes you hear bouncing off a surface before the onset of the reverb tail. This section's about adding more character to the overall sound of the reverb. So the spin. This setting applies modulation to the early reflections with an XY controller. So to turn that off, simply click it. Sliding the controller to the left and right really, so just here, affects how much, or affects the depth of the modulation, while sliding it up and down affects the amount, sorry. So here we go, this would be the most and the deepest, and this would be the least and the most shallow. And that would be the most with the shallow effect and the least with the deep effect. So some pretty odd effects in there if you want them. The early reflections are just modulated by like a low frequency sine wave. So down to the shape. This helps blend the early reflections with the onset of the reverb tail. With this setting lower, there will be more or less a gap between the early reflections and the onset of the reverb tail. At higher settings, the two will blend together, resulting in a smoother reverb sound. So let's play that quickly. We'll drop that down to here. So with the least and the most. So we'll add it again with lots of spin this time. So the more you train your ears to hear this, the easier it will be for you to hear this and use it more effectively. Okay, with our global settings, use these settings to adjust the quality of the reverb's overall size and the amount of the stereo effect. So with the quality, we have eco, mid, and high. Obviously, eco being the least quality, and high being the most quality. So there's a subtle difference in there. Yeah, a lot of people actually like the more or less the cheap sound of the eco. It gives it a sort of different feel to it. Also using the reverb unit on high, you're going to be using a lot more, like getting a lot more CPU usage. Okay, let's just leave that on eco for now. With the size, this basically allows you to change the size or the volume of the room really. So that's a very big room. This is a very small room. This would more or less be like inside a studio. And with the stereo, this one down here, with this pot or potentiometer or just knob, turn down, the reverb's basically mixed into mono. So it's coming out of the center of the mix, whereas if you pan it wide, it's more or less coming out as more natural. Like you wouldn't ever be in a room and hear a mono reverb So move on to the Diffusion Network. This is part of the reverb unit that creates the tail. So we have our high and low shelving filters. So adjusting the high shelf filter allows you to fine-tune the frequencies of the delay model to simulate people, the carpeting, or other absorbent objects or features in a room. So this would be at the very top right with no shelving, would basically be simulating an empty tile room with nothing on the walls. And the low here just basically does the opposite. It'll be cutting out the low end reverb. So basically this is just thinning out the sound. So the further up we get, both of these can be turned off to save CPU usage. You wouldn't really notice it now, so up in your top right, up around where the mouse is now, that's our CPU usage. Towards the end of the track, maybe you might be using 50% on here, and that gets quite a bit dangerous on your computer, as it'll Ableton will eventually crash and you'll keep needing to reopen it, which is quite frustrating at times, especially when you've got a good flow and rhythm going on, and it'll really slow down your computer. So sometimes if you're not really using these, it can come in very handy. So the decay is the amount of time it takes for reflections to die down. With a setting of 1.5 seconds, essentially it's going to take 1.5 seconds for the reverb tail to hit minus 60 decibels, which is the lowest that's going to go on Ableton. So if we turn this up, so we've turned it up to 60 seconds here. This means it will take 60 seconds for each one of these sounds for the reverb tail to hit minus 60 decibels. And down here we have 200 milliseconds. So very short. This is the freeze button. This button will allow you to freeze the decay of a sound indefinitely at whichever moment you really want it to be initiated. The part will repeat the sound will repeat until the freeze button's turned off. So now that I've pressed flat, this will just bypass all the high and low shelf filters while the freeze is activated. The cut button here stops any more signal from coming through. With this button unchecked, you can send as many notes of sound through as you want, all being frozen by Live's reverb. So we'll turn that off. That can get quite annoying. Sorry. So head down to our density and scale down here. These determine how many reflections will occur. With a higher density and scale setting, you're going to be upping the amount of reflected sound bouncing in the room. So if we turn the density up to 96% and we'll turn it down to 0 now. Let's turn the scale up as well. And we'll turn it all the way down again. So we'll turn it back to the preset. They have a more noticeable effect with a smaller size setting, so let's drop the size a little bit. Yeah, there we go. It's much more noticeable now. So we'll put that back on our preset settings. So 60% and 40%, we'll put the size back up to 100. Okay, now we will move on to the chorus. Similar to the spin section over here, the chorus section will add modulation to the diffusion. The controls are pretty much identical to, or they are identical to the spin section under the early reflection setting. So, okay, let's move to our output, which is over here. This section pretty much adjusts the overall signal as well as the amplification of the reflections and diffusions. So Reflect's going to change the amplification of the early reflections section. So over here, this allows you to blend the early reflections with the rest of the reverb's overall mix. So let's play this again. So quite noticeable there. So Command Z to just undo all that until Reflect goes back to 0 decibels. Okay, and diffusion's the same idea as the Reflect pot or potentiometer or knob, whatever you want to call it. Only used for the Diffusion Network section instead, so just this part here. So we'll play that. Okay, that's pretty much all there is to Ableton's Reverb. In the next video, we're going to actually be using this for one of our tracks. We're going to be adding a new track, just more or less a melody in here over the top, and we're going to be adding some reverb and getting used to the reverb unit here. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm Odabear. Don't forget to like, rate and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.